The emotion that I felt when I encountered her voice for the first time, I told myself, if I can translate what I felt in a movie, maybe I'll make her voice echo and I'll honor her memory.
شو اسمك انت؟
أنا نجد حمادة. كنا تمام فيني. ماما غيرت حالي.
I think you recently had a screening with the United Nations. What has been the most gratifying response to this film that you have heard?
The most gratifying and emotional screening for me was actually at Doha Film Festival, because the movie was opening there and they invited all of us, me and my actors, but also they invited the Red Crescent dispatcher, Omar, Mahdi, Nisreen, Rana, the real hero. And they also invited Hind's mother. She was there. And we met for the first time, all of us, around the voice of Hind Rajab. And it was a very strong moment. And actually, Hind mom did a speech, and I couldn't think of a word to describe it. Resilience, you know.
Before we talk about the making of the film, I want to ask you about that idea, about what fiction can do that documentary cannot, and why that was the right form for telling this story.
I needed to tell this story in the present tense. Because I heard her voice for the first time and it was so immediate, so alive, and I needed to share with the audience what I felt this moment. I was thinking that doing a pure documentary is a way to explain, you know, again, what happened, an event in the past. And I was doing this movie and Hind Rajab's were dying every day. So I needed to go back to this moment and do something better than explaining, because at some point explaining doesn't do the job, I would say, which cinema can do in a perfect way, which is to feel, to have empathy.
What were the conversations that you had with her family? Because they've already suffered this horrible loss. And I know you want to honor their daughter, but it probably was a difficult conversation to have. Could you talk a little bit about what you said and what those conversations were like?
Yeah, as I said, before deciding to do this movie, I called Hind's mother. She told me when we met in Doha, actually, I was talking about, when the movie was done, when I was in Gaza and you called me, everybody around me was living a tragedy. So we don't have the time to console each other. So when you consoled me, for me, it meant the world. I needed someone to feel my pain. And was something very emotional for me. I want to show her the movie. And she told me this thing, I'm not ready yet to watch the movie. I can't even hear the recording, which are all over internet. But show it to my brother. I'm very close to him. I trust him. So we did this and they talked about the movie. And when we were in Doha Film Festival, every time there was 4 screenings, and every time there was a Q&A after the screenings. So she arrives at the end of the screening to meet the audience. And she told me, I needed this. I need to talk with people. For me, it was very consoling, and it's like I didn't do proper funeral to my daughter because of the bombing. And those screenings for me are like a funeral. I'm receiving condolence from the audience, and this is very precious to me.
Sometimes what we imagine is worse than the actual thing that it might be depicted, especially in terms of violence. And you make a decision not to leave the office. Can you talk about if the decision was to not show the violence, that meant you were set in the office, or was it the other way around? By setting in the office, you knew you would not have to show the violence?
There is another kind of violence that I'm interested more in, which is the system violence, So for me, staying with those who their job is to save life and to understand why with an ambulance 8 minutes away, they can't send the ambulance. And what is the system forbidding them to send this ambulance, and all the rules they have to follow, which are rules imposed by Israel, by their occupier. We don't need to see guns and blood. Those images are all over our social media, you know.
When you heard her voice, did you start to see the film, or did the film's look come later?
I felt something very strong, I would say. I wasn't seeing, I was feeling the emotion that I felt when I encountered her voice for the first time. I told myself that if I can translate what I felt in a movie, which is a rational decision with a lot of creative choice, maybe I'll make her voice echo and I'll honor her memory. So it was more about a feeling than a decision.
You're trying to tell two stories at once, a rescue and also how these people are wrestling with their own conscience. Was that something that was always clear in writing, or is it something that came through editorial in terms of how you would balance those two stories?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that I need to tell this story, to choose from which point of view I'll tell this story. This was my, let's say, my job as a director. I could tell this story from the point of view of the mother, from the car, or also from the tank, you know, it's another point of view. But I decided to tell the story from the point of view of those who did everything to save the life of this little girl, those who listened also, because I was listening. I told you about this first emotion I had. I was listening to her voice, and I thought what they felt if me, you know, I'm not, you know, a Red Crescent employee, I don't have to send an ambulance, I had this emotion. So what about them? So for me, their perspective was so precious, because they are not in Gaza, they are in the West Bank, and they started receiving emergency call from Gaza because the calls where the place of the Red Crescent was bombarded in Gaza. So all the calls were automatically transferred to Ramallah. So they found themselves in this impossible situation to be the link, you know, between the emergency call in Gaza and the ambulance in Gaza, you know.
Omar complains in the film that the voice of the girl isn't going to make any difference in how the war is perceived, given what's available on social media. Is that something he really said? Because I think the fact that we're sitting here talking about her voice is proof that it did get heard. Could you talk about why that line of dialogue is important and why I think ultimately it's wrong?
Yeah, because it's out of his frustration, you know. And Omar was very frustrated with this situation. There was what we call backstory in screenplay writing of Omar. He told me this story, and I couldn't put it in the movie because it felt so written, you know. He just had a boy. He's a new parent, you know, so he explained me why he was so emotional, despite the fact that he was trained, you know, to receive those calls. He told me, because for me, if I couldn't save this girl, I'm not worthy as a father, you know. I tried to put this in the screenplay, talking with Omar. It's so weird, cinema, because sometimes real thing can feel written, you know.
I want to ask you this last question. That is about getting this movie seen in Israel and in Gaza, and whether or not audiences are able to see it where this story is set.
It was released in the 17th of December in selected theater in Los Angeles and in New York. And I want really American audience to watch it, but it's also distributed all over the world. So I hope that the voice of Hind Rajab will resonate, and through her voice, we can maybe provide a better future for our children around the world, because we can't live in a world where a child is begging for life and we can't rescue this child.
Kaouther Ben Hania, I want to thank you for making this film. Kaouther, I think it's a testament to honoring her voice that we're here. So thank you very much for making the film.
Thank you. Thank you.